Peace to your home, my name is Dimitri. Today about the sick issue. You attend courses, conferences, invite auditors and consultants, receive beautiful reports and presentations, yet almost nothing changes in the company's work. It's not that the courses are bad or the consultants are wrong. The problem is that new knowledge and recommendations do not integrate into people, their roles, and the real rules of the game within the company. Very often, the owner or top manager learns. You have completed an excellent course on finance, where you were shown how P&L, budgets, and management accounting reduce cash gaps and make the business sustainable. You return inspired. Let's do budgeting, build a CFO, work with the numbers. But who should actually change their behavior? Division heads, shop managers, future CFO leaders, specialists who will plan, calculate, and be responsible for execution. They were not on this course, and no one explained to them why they need this budget, how it protects the business, and how it affects their area. What do they see? Tightening control, increased personal responsibility, and a threat to their position. As a result, a document called Budget appears, which you wrote together with the financial director based on your vision. Formally, this is the company's budget, but essentially it is yours and the financial director's. They regard it roughly like this. Promise what you want, but we will live as we are used to. The budget is written, but very few intend to execute it. A similar story in sales. A sales manager must work with objections, but they don't know how, are afraid, or don't understand how. You can train them, but fear kicks in. What if I invest and they leave? You can go for automation. Write scripts for the neural network that will handle 70–80% of typical objections, leaving the complex cases to people. This is already an example of when knowledge and technology are truly integrated into the process, rather than floating in the air as beautiful ideas. The second major problem is that recommendations clash with informal rules. On paper, you have one set of regulations, but in reality, everything relies on "that's how it's done" and personal agreements. The consulting company conducts an audit, studies the numbers, processes, and documents, and provides logical, high-quality recommendations. However, a huge part of the company's life is not recorded in the instructions. It exists in informal agreements, established norms, and unwritten rules of how we do things here. The consultant, especially if it's your first or second time, simply does not see this layer. No one sits down and says, "Here's how things are really organized, here are the pain points, here are the taboo topics and unwritten agreements." As a result, the recommendations turn out to be logical but contradict the current rules of the game. And anything that conflicts with culture and unwritten norms cannot be implemented without changing those rules. The system begins to resist innovations through sabotage, delays, simulated activity, and endless objective reasons. It is especially dangerous when resistance comes not just from below, but from key figures. Imagine, a company wants to enter international markets, and it needs managers with English proficiency and an understanding of working with foreign clients. You hire such people, young, ambitious, with language skills and experience communicating with foreign clients. But the sales director, who has been delivering results for many years, fears competition and loss of status. He begins to quietly undermine these managers. He doesn't give them strong leads, excludes them from important negotiations, lowers their evaluations, and creates a toxic environment in the department. Formally, he is for the company's development and supports the strategy of entering new markets, but in reality he is protecting his position and blocking exactly those specialists without whom entering the global market is impossible. This is a classic example of how the personal fears and interests of key individuals can derail any strategies and recommendations. Can all of this be overcome? Yes, but definitely not with yet another check-the-box course. You will need to work on 3 things simultaneously. First, you need to raise the knowledge level of those who actually need to change their behavior: CFOs, department heads, salespeople, and supervisors. They need to be given the language, tools, and understanding of the consequences in advance, so that by the time the changes start, they are prepared and not caught off guard. The CFO must understand budgeting before you officially announce, "We are implementing budgets." Second, sometimes you must honestly acknowledge that the necessary competencies simply do not exist within the company. In that case, you hire specialists with the required experience, but you don't throw them into the fray immediately. Instead, you adapt them, explain the real culture and rules, provide support from above, and protect them from the covert sabotage of those who fear competition and loss of influence. Thirdly, you rewrite the rules of the game. For audit and consulting recommendations to work, there needs to be the will, yours and your management's, to change not only the documents, but also the real rules of behavior. Update regulations and processes, synchronize formal and informal norms, restructure the system of rewards and punishments so that it is beneficial to do things differently and painful to sabotage. If the top leader loses control over the implementation of changes, the system almost always reverts back to the familiar. Ultimately, everything boils down to two barriers: people's unwillingness and the reluctance to invest money in training, hiring, and adaptation. People do not understand what you want, fear increased responsibility and loss of status, and do not believe that you will see the changes through to the end. At the same time, you are not ready to pay for strong specialists and their integration into the team. Add to this the resistance of the environment, valuable, old employees who have been with you from the very beginning but do not want to change, and who become the center of gravity, pulling the company back if you do not intervene personally. Therefore, every time you bring new knowledge into the company, ask yourself a few simple questions. Who else besides me needs to understand this? Who should be able to act differently? What rules and habits need to be rewritten? Whom to support and with whom to part ways gently but honestly? And think through not only the system of rewards, but also the system of sanctions for sabotage and imitation of changes. Otherwise, old habits will defeat any new knowledge. Peace to your home until we meet again.